Sorry. Namaste. Getting over a bit of a bug. Welcome to Mindful Serenity Yoga, and thank you again for showing up. I'm glad that I'm getting through to one person anyway. Thus is my mission. I am not here to promote myself, as you can see by the way I look and the way I do these videos. I am not here for monotonizing. I can never say that word. Monetizing? Sorry. Kind of monotony. Monetizing. I am here simply to share what I'm learning and hope that it's getting through to somebody. And it is a compulsion in me more so than anything else. My ego is back here, which is still very prevalent in me, saying, "Oh, no, don't do that. Don't get up there and make a fool out of yourself." And then here I am anyway, making a fool of myself. And I'm perfectly okay with it at the deepest level. Wow. Again, I'm rambling on. Cold medicine. Anyway, regardless, what I wanted to do is pull a question from the jar. Let's see what we got this time. Well, it's a big one. I'm going to take a deep breath. And again, that's just to get my monkey mind settled. So I'm answering the question from a higher level of understanding that we all possess, that's within all of us. And I will ask, this is a question. Okay. As we awaken, is it best to refrain from relationships? As we awaken, is it best to refrain from relationships? Whoa, what a question. And of course, I don't know. I understood every question. It's like, I don't know. My truth, I've been practicing yoga for many, many years and studying and reflecting. And I must have read over, 4,000 or 5,000 books in I'm not joking, in the last 10 years related to this deeper understanding that I'm looking at. I've studied for many years in university. That's important. I've explored and understood my own mind, reflecting back on my own thinking as a writer. I still don't know everything. In fact, I don't know very much at all. And the more I think I know, the less I know. And it keeps going cyclical like that. There was a time I used to think I was a very knowledgeable person and I wanted to stand in front of a class and do this and this and this. And then I realized the more and more I did that was my ego, and I know so little. How's that for an honest reflection that you probably don't even want to hear? You just want me to answer this question, if you even want me to do that. So I shall go ahead and answer the question. As we awaken, is it best to refrain from relationships? And I would like to say that I'm remembering a really nice thing that hit me from what Edgar Tolle said. He said relationships reflect back to us our own states of consciousness. So every relationship we are in reflects back to us our own state of consciousness. And what does that mean, crazy lady? You're still not answering my question. It simply means that relationships are neither going to awaken you faster, nor are they going to stop you from awakening, because relationships are just a means, like they're mirror reflections of where you are at in your own evolution. How awakened are you? And then that will, if you look at the relationships you're in and your need or your attachment to the people around you, your sense of I don't want to be alone, or I want to be alone, leave me alone, wherever you're at in your relationships, it's merely a reflection of where you are in your own state of consciousness. How conscious are you? Your relationships will reflect that back to you. If you're in a relationship of great turmoil, you're fighting out, like I'm talking about the different types of relationships we have. We can have intimate relationships with a partner. Probably started off as a romantic relationship and might have morphed into something else with all these expectations. You are my soulmate, therefore you are meant to make me happy, and I am meant to make you happy. You're meant to read my mind and understand what I need at all times and meet those needs, because there's something missing in me that you're meant to fill as my soulmate. And we all do that, right, with our idea of romance. And that, of course, is propagated through all the movies and stuff, that media and whatever we're seeing. So when we're in those relationships, if those relationships we have are very tumultuous, that's a state of our own consciousness, because the individual is reflecting back to us our attachments, our expectations. Because if we're unhappy in a relationship and we assume the other person is not meeting our expectations, has nothing to do with the other person, because they're in their own little realm of understanding. It has to do with us. We've got something missing inside us, and we have attached these expectations on the other human being, telling them they should fill us up. They should meet our needs, and when they don't, when they, in the beginning of a romantic relationship, it seems like they're meeting all our needs, the perfect person, the right height, the right look, the right personality, the right job, the right whatever. And so they seem to be meeting all our needs. But then when we get into the relationships and our expectations and need for this individual builds as our attachment builds, and they start being who they are, which they were always, and we start seeing that they're not able to meet our expectations, which is humanly impossible to do in the beginning of this, but we just have this fantasy and ideation that they should. And when they start not being able to, we become very, very unhappy in the relationship. And we start blaming them for not being the people they said they were or pretended to be or all that. And that is a reflection of our consciousness. That is a reflection not on them, but on us, on our own neediness, on our own, projection outward onto the person instead of giving to ourselves what we need and want and looking inward, right? So it's a reflection of where we are. We're not very conscious when we do that, and not many of us are conscious. And so our intimate relationships are a great, great mirror for showing us where we are in this waking up stage. How far awake are you? Are you reacting to your spouse when they come home in a bad mood and don't say hi to you? Well, that has nothing to do with them. They might have had their own story for not saying hi to you. They may have had a car accident on the way in. They may have gotten a fight with their boss, whatever. But if we're so attached to them saying hi to us, and we see that as something they've done to us when they don't, then that is not them. It's us. It shows, oh, I'm not that awake, and my ego is still there. My ego still feels it needs this person to do a certain thing so that I feel good, right? Has a lot to do with what we've stuffed and stored, and what in yoga we call the stuffing story, samskaras. In psychological understanding, it's repressed and suppressed, emotion or experiences that we've had in the past that we've become our psyche, become our idea of who we are. And so those are stuffed and stored, and they're very often very painful experiences that we stuffed and stored. So when this individual comes in and says and say hi to us, it triggers something that happened 30 years ago when your parents never talked or whatever, said hi to you and ignored you, whatever. So you've had this thing being triggered, and it's being poked, and all the energy underneath it that just wants to come up and flow through is pushing up against it. So you have this emotional reaction that we blame on the other person. But the other person didn't do anything other than fail to say hi. They didn't intentionally trigger us in most cases. They just did. And we blame them for that, for not being who we expected them to be, who we thought they should be. We also have relationships with other individuals that we have different sets of expectations on. Like our children, we expect them to be a certain way. Hey, we raise them so they're like an extension of us, and we have this conditioning in our minds that if our children screw up, we screw up, something we did as a parent, blah, 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 blah. So we have all these expectations on them, and if they don't meet those expectations, we blame them, and we have to blame ourselves. We have different relationships with our friends, our coworkers, our siblings, the neighbor down the street. We place less expectation, for example, on the lady that's, at the cash when we're getting our groceries than we do with the spouse who's coming home and not saying hi to us. So we have different relation, but all has to do with what we are experiencing inside. So when you notice yourself reacting, projecting, getting angry at somebody else for what they did or didn't do, or when you feel, inflated by something someone says or how they're acting. You're feeling lifted by what they're doing. Remind yourself that it is not the other person, it is you. They're just reflecting where you're at in your own state of evolution and consciousness. They're just showing you where you're at. And from that point, when you're, aware enough to look at it, oh my gosh, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm reacting to that fact that he never said hi to me when he came into the door. I'm reacting to, oh, that's triggering the same scare I have in me. I'm doing this. So reflect on that and own it. And then your relationships are not a problem, right? They can be a great tool in your awakening stage. So when the question was asked, should we refrain from relationships? And I say, don't seek a relationship in order to evolve, and do not refrain from relationship in order to evolve. If the relationships come into your life, as life is do, they flow in. You're with somebody and this is happening. Great. Just go with the flow and experience all of it. At the same time, be mindful of what you're doing inside, the mess you have inside, or what needs to be healed inside of you, and seeing every relationship you had as just a mere reflection of what you're experiencing inwardly. Love is not about what the other person can give us. Love is an experience that is inside us, meant to flow through us. It is part of our Satchitananda. It is a part of our Shakti flow. So it is who we are, right? So stay open to love and do your best to stay open to love. But if we're blaming the other person for not meeting our needs, we are going to close up in resistance and we're not going to experience that Shakti flow. So it is important to know then that they are not responsible for how we're experiencing life or what we're feeling inside. We are. That doesn't mean stay in an abusive relationship. That doesn't mean, allow yourself to be told off. And sometimes people will consciously and intentionally try to hurt you in their own unconscious evolution. So be mindful of that. And you need to love yourself before you love the other person. That's another thing, because love is internal, right? So if you love yourself enough, you're not going to stay in those relationships. So if you notice that you are staying in relationships that are condescending and abusive, or you're not getting, your higher evolution needs met because the person's not allowing you to be yourself, not that they can stop you, but if they're constantly trying to squish you down into something that makes them feel better, you recognize that's where you are. Then say, okay, this is where I'm at, okay? And then make your decision from there. I'm not saying blame the other person, just say, this is not conducive to my evolution. So some relationships can be counterproductive to your awakening process. And some of them can be very conducive. Just because they're challenging doesn't mean they're not helping you. Challenge is a wonderful catalyst for change, a wonderful catalyst for self-exploration, a wonderful catalyst for awakening. But don't stay in a relationship that's creating suffering, but the person is truly unconscious on the other side, and their intention is to hurt you and keep you small. Then you wake away. And when you become more aware and awaken, you begin to realize and see those things. So stay in relationships that are fulfilling, but at the same time they might be challenging, and know that every relationship that you're in, it is your inner world that you need to explore more than the other person. And try not to attach too much or place expectations on other human beings, and not overly attach expectations on yourself either to be a certain way. You are healing, you are evolving, you are growing, you are expanding, and life will give you what you need. If it gives you a relationship, great. If it doesn't, that's great too. Go from there. Go with where you're at this moment of your evolution, and explore the relationships around you or the lack of relationships around you. Find your source and your center and build up from there. Do not necessarily have to refrain from relationships, and you do not necessarily need a relationship in order to evolve. You need to flow with what life gives you and experience it all, noticing and knowing that your inner world is actually the microcosm of the entire world. That's all I have to say about that. I hope that made sense. Thank you so much for joining me, and have an amazing day. Namaste.